Hello, my name is Ryan Woodward, and I will be talking about the financial recession of 2008 and 2009. In the beginning of the 21st century, it started off with a rough start with getting over a small recession of the early 2000s and financial expansion policies that were halted by terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. Although the country was able to rebound shortly after, and it led to strong expansion from 2003 to 2006, where stock prices rose over 60% and housing prices over 90%, which had a great impact on overall American wealth. This soon took a turn for the worst, as this economic boom soon turned into a bust, which was the worst since the Great Depression. Why did this suddenly happen? Were there any warning signs? What could we have done to stop this from happening? And what can we do in the future to prevent these things from happening? I'll be taking a closer dive into what caused the recessions of 2008 and 2009, the events leading up, potential reasons for the crash, how did the recession change the U.S. economy, and what can we do in the future. Before the 2008-2009 Great Recession, the United States was going through an expansionary fiscal policy under President George W. Bush. This expansionary policy of the Jobs and Growth Tax Reconciliation Act of 2003 was a tax-based policy which decreased personal taxes, capital taxes, and gave aids to states as the 2001 Economic Growth and Tax Reconciliation Act failed due to the September 11th terrorist attacks. This fiscal policy was an effort to give people more of their money so that they can spend and stimulate the economy. These policies worked great as the economy turned around and had 5 straight years of positive GDP and decreased unemployment from 6% in 2003 to 4.6% in 2007. On the surface, everything seemed to be great with the economy as stocks were rising, people were buying houses, and increasing their overall wealth. Although this was masked by irresponsible financial decisions by individuals as well as banks, which all revolved around the housing markets. The housing markets took a big boom in the mid-2000s due to many homes being purchased with lower than average or recommended down payments and sometimes no down payments at all. As housing prices were going up, more and more people were buying houses but not paying them off, which soon led to a big problem with aggregate supply and demand. As Americans were paying less taxes and housing prices were increasing, American wealth was increasing, and this created more aggregate demand for goods and services. Although once the housing market hit a ceiling, prices for the houses started to fall, which in turn decreased the overall wealth of America and resulted in less demand for housing. The falling prices for housing was not even the worst problem for the housing industry, but it was just the aspect of subprime mortgages where not only individuals, but as well as banks who offered these mortgages were losing money as people could not pay for them. Due to the decreased demand of houses, the supply finally caught up with the demand and eventually became greater. This became one stacked problem where money was being borrowed more than it carried on hand of total assets for companies and individuals to pay off. A potential cause of the rationale of these decisions of individuals as well as banks was the aspect of overconfidence and arrogance, thinking that the economy will continue to grow and housing prices will continue to go up. Additionally, banks were incentivized to increasing profits of the company, as well as their bonus will get bigger based on profits of the company. Banks were able to achieve this with securities with hedge funds, building mortgages which were hard to put a true value on and were a lot riskier. Many of these securities hid their true nature of what they were comprised of, didn't give accurate ratings of risk, and the banking industry assumed that it wouldn't be an issue. Another hidden issue into the housing market was the increasing rates on mortgage rates, which were lowered to help the 2001 recession. What helped the country get out of the 2001 recession led to a leading factor of the 2008 recession, as interest rates on these mortgages were more than doubled in a few years, and homeowners had payments that they couldn't afford. After the housing market started to take a big hit, the banking and stock markets were next, as they were selling off their assets to get cash to stay up and running. This led to a mass fire sale, which created even lower prices of assets, which resulted in a direct fall of stock market in which the Dow would lose more than half its value in 2007 and 2008. With all this, people didn't have money to spend, banks couldn't lend money, businesses started to lose money, close, and lay off its employee as the recession went into full effect. This recession led to many changes in the U.S. economy as they realized many things that they were doing wrong to their own demise. In order to rebound from this recession, only a few weeks after his term, President Obama signed the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which was an expansionary policy which had aspects of government spending on infrastructure, as well as tax cuts and state grants. Additionally, the government knew it must take more control of the financial system, and the biggest being financial regulation and the creation of the Dodd-Frank Act. The Dodd-Frank Act was when the government had more regulatory power over financial industries. This act was signed into law in 2010 and was an effort to prevent the predatory mortgage lending tactics such as subprime mortgages that banks were issuing. It made it easier to understand mortgages for individuals, and it deterred brokers from offering high commission or high interest rates. Looking back, there are many lessons that we can learn and implement from the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009 to implement into future to prevent future issues of recessions. The three biggest things we can do today to ensure stability in the future is 1. Reducing risk, 2. Responsible lending, and 3. Ensuring we have morality for all. The housing and financial sectors were comprised of risky investments, many of which were hidden in their true nature and eventually became too risky for their own survival. Although a portion of risk is good, when a large portion of the portfolio is comprised of these risky investments, one small slip can lead into a big crash, as it did in 2008. Next is responsible lending to ensure loans are given out to people and companies who can pay for them, as well as ensuring that they have enough capital to pay them off and not go underwater as they did. Finally, with all this is having a sense of morality and not wanting to trick people or hide true information or intentions in an effort for their own profits or bonuses. We need to put others and customers' interests in front of the business in total to ensure we have good business practices and think about the long-term growth over the short-term gain.